right, welcome to our show. It's called Let's Coffee, and this is a collaboration between Yardstick Coffee and Daily Drink Magazine. We are coming to you today from our collaborative studios here in Double Dragon Plaza. This is Honeycomb, Manila, which is our co-working space. And we're joined today by Tere Domine of Kalsada Coffee. Welcome, Tere.
Thank you for having me, Kayo.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So the idea behind the show is that, when Andre and I first started talking about it, is that we just wanted to have an opportunity to talk about some of the big ideas that we have in coffee in particular over a small cup of coffee, right? And it's something that we go through in our regular day-to-day lives. And you ever have that moment where you think, I wish someone had recorded that?
Yeah.
So that's where we are today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Kalsada and your role there?
Okay. Yeah. So, Kalsada is I guess we're a global company. We wanted to say we champion Philippine specialty coffee. So we mostly do work at the farm level and increase productivity and quality, and then we export a little bit to the US, some to Europe, and now starting to explore the Asian market, our neighboring countries. Locally, we also sell a little bit of green and to local roasters, and we roast and supply to cafes in Metro Manila and some outside. So
was that the original plan with Kalsada?
No, not really. It was originally Carmel just wanted to bring back Philippine coffee to the US. But what happened was when we were about to export our first production, we got some difficulties with export documents. So our inventory has been sitting there for about 7 months, and we said, it's deteriorating, how coffee is.
Humidity and...
and it's getting old, so we wanted to test roast a little bit. So we did collaborate with EDSA Beverage, roasted a little bit, and just explored the local market. And that's when our roasting company was born, out of a problem in export.
So, this is the nice thing about startup life, right? Is that you kind of have to adapt to the situation, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that that also happened when you guys started working in farm, right? Like going up into the mountain province. How did that kind of happen?
Yeah, true. We currently are now based in Benguet in a community called Sitio Belize in Atok. But originally, we were planning on building our first community mill in Tajan Mountain Province. That didn't work out because one of problem is how far it was. It takes me about 14 to 15 hours to get there one way. And also another obstacle is one of our head farmers passed away from an illness, and then the children didn't want to take over. So that's when we had to look into other places. And so there's this one PhD student who is doing a thesis or dissertation in this place, and he heard about us looking for coffee, and so he just told us, there's a community here that doesn't have a buyer. You might want to check them out. And so we did. We went, knocked on their doors, and asked if they have coffee to sell. We tried them. Some of them are really good. And that's when we started that relationship. And now we have 2 mills in Sitio Belize, and we've been working there for almost 5 years now.
What is your designation in Kalsada Coffee? And obviously you don't stay just doing that, right? But what's your designation? And as it stands today, kind of what is Kalsada's mission? What is Kalsada? So I guess my question is, what is Kalsada?
What is Kalsada? Okay. Well, our vision and mission has evolved over the years. But right now, I would say Kalsada would be an enabler for the production side of coffee. So we wanted to bridge or fill in the gaps that we found along the way to increase quality, productivity, and also improve the livelihood of the farmers at the forefront. And for them to be proud of what they do and their product. So it's simple, but I think that's what we do. So
in specialty coffee, we always talk about the coffee journey, right? And it's always the journey of the coffee, like the origin story of the coffee. What is the origin story for Tere at Kalsada?
It was in 2013. I met Carmel for the first time, and I met her through her sister, who was to be my professor in grad school back then. But I've known her from my previous work. So it started out as really just going with Carmel to all these coffee origins in the Cordilleras and mostly doing translation work for her because I speak Ilocano. So we go to the farms and she would ask questions. I would translate for her, translate back to the farmers. So that's pretty much how it all started for me. I didn't even think that I would be in coffee at all. My family doesn't drink coffee.
So before this, you were not involved in coffee before Kalsada?
Not at all.
What were you doing before this?
I used to work for the Department of Science and Technology.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm very familiar with that because on the way over one day on the EIX, I got pulled over for speeding at 72 kilometers per hour. And the guy said, "Oh, well, our radar is very accurate. It is what do you call this? Calibrated by the DOST."
Yeah.
So the DOST really does that stuff?
Yeah, they have an engineering and mechanization arm that does all that kind of things. Yeah.
I thought he was making it up.
Probably not. That's probably
not.
True. That's probably true.
Wow. All right. So after that, so you met Carmel.
Yeah.
And she got you involved in the thing, and then what happened next?
Yeah. So I was waiting for grad school to happen pretty much when we met. And so she was like, her sister really recommended me. It's like, oh, she knows how to go around. Because my role at DOST before was to connect all the scientists that have worked abroad to go back here and connect them to all these universities to further their researches. So I would go around the Philippines. So that's what I used to do. And so when I met Carmel, she was like, I have a project on coffee. And I was like, I don't understand it, but okay. And then on the side, I was also doing like organized tours. So I would organize tours to Mountain Province. I would do organized surf tours to Balear and San Juan. This was circa 2011 to 2013. Okay. So that's what I did. And I was like, oh, Carmel, we actually have a tour coming up to Mountain Province. And because I don't know any better, I thought coffee only grows in Mountain Province. So I told her, oh, we're doing a tour and you should just come along. But the tour didn't happen, but we still went. So it's just the two of us. We went around Mountain Province. We actually started in Ifugao, Mountain Province, Benguet, and just going to universities and cooperatives, just talking to farmers and asking like general questions like, what do you grow? And why don't you grow a lot of coffee now? What happened in the past? Like, do you still grow coffee? Where do you sell them? And we get coffees or samples from the farmers. And we brought them here back in Manila and have folks like, I think Andre was one of the first people who tried the coffees. And we roasted through Slice sample roaster back at the Curator then. So, yeah, that's where it started.
So it's been a really long journey. So from like that tiny sample roaster and like these trips, not knowing anyone, to where you are now, right?
Yeah.
Like they talk about like watershed moments or great moments in the history of a company. When you think of like the history of Kalsada, what would you consider those moments to be?
Um, I think it was that one interview with the farmer in Mountain Province that kind of like, oh, that happens? Like, so we asked, I mean, we actually didn't ask, they asked us. So the farmer's like, how are you related to some groups of these coffee groups?
Yeah.
And we weren't, because we were new and we didn't know what we were looking for. We just asked random questions, just trying to, scratch the surface.
Yeah.
And we didn't know any of them. I didn't know any of the coffee players back then. And when we ask why, they give you a story that, they still owe us money for coffees we sold them years back. So I thought, well, that sucks, because they're farmers, and I come from a family of rice farmers too, so I know how difficult it is. And having people owe them money for a couple of sacks of coffee means a lot. So that was the interesting part for me. It's like, okay, there's more to coffee than just knowing or finding out why we're not selling anymore. There's exploitation, there's, corruption and all other things. And that's that piqued my interest, I think. And I was like, okay, I have to ask more questions.
And how do you go about fixing problems like that?
Right. I think in the beginning, it's just asking, it's like, what happened? And we weren't even like thinking about finding solutions for it. We just wanted to know why it's happening and how it's happening in the Philippine context for coffee.
And was that part of the original mission of Kalsada?
I think part of the original mission for Kalsada is just, Carmel really wanted to just bring back good Philippine coffee to the States. That's it. Very easy. It's like, let's find a farmer or an organization that produces coffee, buy it, and then send it back to the States. That's it.
Super simple.
Simple.
Okay.
But along the way, we realized it's not as simple, because we would get samples from all these farmers, try them out, and only one or two would be good enough to drink for people who's starting specialty in Manila back then.
And would you consider that like among your key obstacles?
Yes, that really like opened more questions, but also like that's when we realized we can do something about it. Like what's missing in the production side of things for the Philippines, why we can't produce good quality coffees. Like honestly, at the beginning, I didn't think we can produce good quality coffee because I didn't know any better. So like maybe a year or 2 years into it, I was doubting it.
So it took some time.
It did, because I didn't understand it. So that also adds to the doubt,
Really interesting. Okay, so that's a good question. You mentioned that you found this great coffee, this great location, and then when the farmer, passed away, his family didn't want to keep working in coffee. How often do you face that kind of situation, and is it an ongoing concern?
It is, and I think it's just not in coffee. It's a lot of other crops. It's an ongoing problem in agriculture.
Yeah, agriculture in general.
Yeah, agriculture is not very, appealing to the young people because it's long, it's labor intensive. They would rather go to the city and do a daily job and get paid on a daily basis than work on the farms for months before getting something out of it. So yes, we encounter that a lot, and that's also why a lot of the farmers we work with are still older. Yeah.
So like I work a lot in the art and cultures world, right? And that's something that we faced with tattoo culture, where the tattoo masters here in the Philippines, like the Wangod,
Yeah.
they didn't have apprentices to keep the art alive, and that art was going to die.
Yeah.
And we've also seen it with like the zapateros in Marikina, where they don't want their children to be making shoes. And if we're starting to see situations like that in agriculture, how do we address that problem? How do you see that? I guess what I'm asking is that, as someone who's on the ground and is in contact with them, how do we address those issues and hopefully fix it, I guess?
Well, based on what we're doing right now, or based on experience, one way of effectively encouraging them to go back to agriculture is to assure them that there's money, there's income, and it's a livelihood that they can rely on. Because at the end of the day, everybody just wants to have food on the table, a roof on their head. So it's really just making sure they can survive with agriculture. And one way of us doing that is we hire a lot of the young farmers or children of farmers we work with to do a lot of like the major activities at the farms. But also we want the younger ones to go to university and get an education that may equip them to run the business, run coffee farming as a business. So that, and just, like encouraging them or inspiring them that, hey, we started this when we were younger, your age, and it didn't really look lucrative at the time, but it can really be a sustainable livelihood for you guys.
You mean using Kalsada as a model for them to look at and mirror for their own lives?
Yes.
So on that level, it's like you guys are almost like role models, and
we'd like to think so. Yeah, at least we wanted to inspire them that, like us can, like young people can go to university and still go back to agriculture and make it a business.
So in that, kind of to switch lanes a bit, like you guys being role models for them, are there any other role models that you guys have seen yourselves, following, whether it's nearby nations, similar species of coffee? How has that played into your situation?
Good question. I mean, my inspirations are not in agriculture per se, because I really came from the medical field. So
so did Lori Obra of Rusty's Hawaiian.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I used to work at the Department of Science and Technology. I'm involved with a lot of researches that are medical related. And so I guess one of my inspirations is now the Chancellor of UP Manila, who is a genetics doctor. So she was my mentor too, and she has a vision for health that I think I would want to do for similar thing for agriculture, if not just for coffee.
If you were to restate that vision as if it were for coffee, how would you say it?
It's providing equal opportunity to all farmers.
Okay.
Yeah. I think she is always big on that, like make healthcare accessible to everybody. And I think that's what I wanted to work on in agriculture, is make agriculture, a decent livelihood for everybody.
So given that vision, right? Given that vision, if you had unlimited time and unlimited money, what would Kalsada do?
Yeah, we have a lot of things we wanted to do, but I think one of the major projects we really wanted to push for is setting up a coffee research and development institute.
What would happen there?
It's pretty much doing actual and sound research in different aspects of the value chain. So it's not only in agriculture. I mean, it has to be on roasting side of things, consumer side of things, even trading. So for me, research, actual and factual research makes a policy effective. So we want to have as much research on the ground as we can, because I think the Philippines is lacking that in terms of coffee.
So that's given unlimited funding and unlimited time.
Yeah.
If we needed to find the funding and find the time, how would we go about doing that?
Well, I wanted to, of course, want to have a research institute for coffee, right? And
Government?
I want it to be a government and private partnership.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, of course, government has an unlimited source of funding, so long as we pay our taxes. In theory,
right, yeah.
So so long as everybody pays taxes, we will have enough fund to fund all the researches that we need for the industry. But also, what's important is having the industry participation, like private, because they will drive the researches. Like, because we as an industry need these researches for our businesses. So ideally, I'm envisioning it as a partnership between government and private.
It's interesting because, I don't know if you guys see Kalsada as a social enterprise.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. It's very fuzzy because, we live in an age where everyone calls themselves a social enterprise, and you really have to check,
Yeah.
right, whether or not a social issue is actually being addressed. Like some people say, oh, we started a social enterprise, and you're like, how are you doing it? Oh, we're hiring local people. And that really isn't fixing something, right? Like finding a specific social concern and the need to fix, right, to fix the issues that we have in agriculture. That's a real social change issue. Let's talk about now, right? So come out of the hypothetical, go back into the now, and in terms of processing and experimentation, with your current setup, how do you balance the sustainability and the need for experiments, because the experiments don't always work out?
Yeah, well, when we started, and again, I didn't come from a coffee background, but I did have a science background. So experiments are a natural thing for us. So a lot of the first part of doing the processing is small batch experiments.
How small?
I would do a kilo batch.
Okay.
I have 33 different fermentation experiments when I started out, staying at the farms and doing all the fermentation experiments. And I read through a lot of that online, but I also had the opportunity to chat with some of the industry players that have been doing processing experiments for the last couple of years. I was lucky to sit through a car ride with Dr. Manuel Diaz to a farm, and I just asked him random things about fermentation, and he's just very generous about everything, and he's like, just try it out, taste it, and see if it works out. So, so I did all 33 experiments for the first year in small batches, and we tried all of that. We sent him a bunch of samples. He gave us feedback, and then we just narrowed it down to smaller and smaller, smaller batches, smaller number of experiments, bigger batches. But overall, we don't do anything crazy with our experimentation. It's still very natural, or what we wanted to do is it's going to be replicable enough for a farmer, a regular farmer with not enough funding to, implement this fermentation experiment.
So you don't need big gas tanks?
No gas tanks, no refrigerators. It's all natural, but we wanted to control it as much. And it's really understanding, for the farmers, it's understanding how fermentation works. That's one. and how you can at least control it with whatever you have. So that's what we do. Like, we have all this knowledge about fermentation, but we do the experiments that are suitable for whatever they have at the farms at the moment, you know.
Nice.
So, and then, like, that's just processing. Recently, we designed a drying facility that we've revised over the years, Because initially, what you would do, of course, is go to a country of origin, see what they have, try to maybe copy that and apply it here.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way because we always have different, problems.
I remember in very early days of Kalsada having discussions with your team and different people involved about Arabusta, which was, it's in the news now because Ivory Coast is being able to produce a lot. But it's something that, you try, it doesn't work out, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
So what are the ones that you've seen have worked out?
So right now, because the Cordilleras have limited flat areas, we designed a drying facility that's up for the terrain, and it's weatherproof. Ideally, it's weatherproof because we get a lot of typhoons during harvest season, and we can't avoid those.
So is it covered? Or?
It's covered. We use a polycarbonate roofing.
Okay.
Yeah, and we use, instead of using wood or bamboo that deteriorates every few years, we use, based from the recommendations of the farmers themselves too, because they need to build it, and they build it every year or make renovations. They recommended that we use steel.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought they would go with PVC.
Yeah.
So they went with steel.
Yeah.
So they're metal covered in polycarbonate.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
So
isn't it a concern for the for deterioration, rust, and such?
We have maintenance that we do every few months or every year, depending on what needs to be maintained. Like polycarbonate accumulates fungi, so you have to brush that. Rust, of course, leaks. So we have all those covered for maintenance.
And those are the revisions that you have to make over and over. Yeah.
I mean, we copied one model from, I think it was Colombia the first time, and that didn't work out. Like the following year, we had to change it. So now, and then we have to measure like the effectiveness of or an efficiency of the build out. So on our first year, we reduced about 36% of labor costs just putting up this drying facility, which is a lot for an operation, small operations. So that's what we wanted to do. It's not. It can be a model for mills around the Cordillera, which have the same issues, and it's subject to revisions depending on where they want it to be placed.
Okay, so this all sounds super interesting, but like I've never been to your farm, right?
Yeah.
So and the concept of the origin trip has really hit the zeitgeist since it so much of the consumption that we make in the specialty coffee industry revolves around competition, right? And every barista goes up and says, "Oh, I went to this farm, I went to that farm," right? So if I was a competition barista maybe, or even just a tourist, and we were to go on an origin tour to your location, what would happen?
Okay. Yeah, well, we do a little bit of this already with our clients, and a few baristas who are interested in seeing our operation.
When you say clients, you mean roasters, cafes?
Yeah, and cafes, yeah. So, well, we would start at the highway. We will meet you at kilometer 22 at a waiting shed, and we'll pick you up from there. And we'll go 3 kilometers down from the highway to the community where we work with. So it's Sitio Belize, and our origin tours are all homestays, so we would stay with a farmer and see how their day-to-day is also. So when we get there, we'll show you around how coffee is grown in Benguet, where it's never a plantation, it's a backyard farm.
And is it multiple kinds of coffee or?
It's all Arabica, but all different varieties.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of Red Bourbon, some Mundo Novo, San Ramon. We have other varieties. I would say about 7 more other varieties of coffee or Arabica. So yeah, so we would let you.
It's still and then you homogenize it.
Right now, because we cannot individually identify the varieties, we separate it by cherry color. So we have the orange cherries and the red cherries.
Yeah.
And so the red...
And it's not yellow, it's orange.
It's orange. Okay. So the orange is at least one variety. And then the reds, we just call it a mixed red variety. Because for the farmers, that's easily identifiable. Color difference is identifiable at the moment.
At the picking level, yeah.
Yeah, and the picking level, you can like, okay, this is ripe for orange and this is ripe for red. Yeah, so that's also going to be part of the farm tour. We will orient you on how picking works and the standards for picking. You can't just pick all kinds of coffee cherries. And you have to separate it by color, orange or red. So we'll go around the farms and let you pick coffee cherries. And then we'll bring it back to the mill and you process it yourself. So we have a machine to remove the skin of the coffee. And all through this, we will walk you through why you need to do specific steps of the processing, why you need to pick the ripest cherries. You know, it's like, why do we have to process it within the same day? Why do we have to do a dry or wet fermentation? Why do we have to wash it? You know, why do we have to mix it? Why is fermentation? What happens during fermentation? And then you'll have to dry the coffees too. You would have to help the farmers working in the mill to dry, pack, and measure moisture contents of what's drying on the tables. And yeah, basically go through the entire process of how farmers do it themselves. And then at the end of the day, would sit over a liter or a pot of coffee.
I thought you were going to say beer. Yeah, so a pot of coffee.
And talk some more, you know. And then the following day, you do the same. Yeah, you bring out the coffees. Yeah, it's pretty much experiencing how the farmers do it themselves.
Nice.
Yeah.
On a more personal level, like, is there an experience you had with a farmer that, like a great story that you wish everyone could go through, maybe?
Well, we currently work with about 100 farmers and...
100?
Yeah. And each individual farmer is different from the other. Of course, everybody knows Auntie Astrid, and she's a leader in her own right. She can. But I wanted to talk about her son, Rafi, who I think is the future of coffee agriculture in the Philippines. So Rafi currently is, I don't know, I would say he's our quality manager at the farm right now. So he would receive coffees and say if it's ripe enough or not ripe enough and send it back to the farmer if it's not ripe enough and tell them why. He is the son of Auntie Astrid, who is our mill manager. And so Rafi has been involved in a lot of the operations that we do in Sitio Belize. But he's always just the shy, boy watching, but he understands all of it. Like, he listens why it's important to wait for the cherries to ripen, like what sugar content means. And he can talk about it in his language and understand the quality of coffee, because we drink coffee with him. And he also, we wanted to make sure he has, that sense of pride and responsibility also for the community where he belongs. And I see that he's a leader in the making. Like, he can speak his mind freely, even with the elder people, and that's kind of like a big thing at the farms in the provinces. And so he would decline accepting cherries that are not the quality we're looking for, and explain to them why. And also, he knows how to taste coffee, and like
That's a big one.
yeah. I mean, I think also just being open to all the projects that we're implementing there, and his willingness to stay. It's
Yeah.
like
That's a really big one.
yeah, he wants to learn and wanted to be a part of it. So for me, I think he's the future of coffee farming. A knowledgeable farmer that's a son of the farmer that takes pride in what he does.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having
I
me.
wish we had more time to talk. But again, this has been Let's Coffee with Tere Domine of Kalsada Coffee. If anyone ever wants to get in touch with you, is the best way through Instagram?
Yes, follow me on Instagram. My name is Tere Domine, so at Tere Domine. Or you can also look me up on Facebook. It's my name, Tere Domine.
And of course, Kalsada as well.
And yes, Kalsada.
If someone wants to go on one of these origin trips, can they convince you to do it, or it's really just for cafe and business partners?
No, we're opening it to public.
That's awesome.
So for the next 3 months of harvest, we are encouraging people to come join us and see our operations, help out. We're expecting a big harvest this year, so if we can get you guys to help us with all the things that we do on the farm, that would be awesome, and we'll teach you, or at least share with you, what we do and how we do things there.
Couple last questions.
Okay.
First one, not counting any Philippine coffees, what's your favorite coffee to drink?
Oh, that's easy. A lot of people know which one's my favorite. It's Kenya is my favorite origin.
Washed or natural?
Wash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a Kenya wash is. Yeah, but if I go to like a cafe, I'd look for a Kenya wash, and that's the first thing I would try.
Very good answer. We have a really good Kenya wash today. You got to try in our bar. If you're going to have coffee with anyone from any time, maybe,
Yeah.
who would that be, and why?
Okay. That's a good question. I would probably sit with Chitwan of the Philippine Coffee Board over coffee, and just share what Kalsada has been up to and our progress, and also talk about what can be possible for the Philippine coffee industry.
That's actually a really good. That's actually a really good answer. Like building bridges, and I think that kind of embodies like the spirit of what Let's Coffee is about, right? Like Let's Coffee itself is a collaboration between Yardstick and Daily Drink magazine, right? And building bridges and making the opportunity to sit down is very valuable, right?
Right.
And it seems like there are a lot of things that would be solved if we just had coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Like coffee and conversation should be a regular thing, and it has. One conversation that leads to another. It's always a good thing to have conversations with people, especially people who are already in coffee. And yeah, coffee brings people together anyway. So.
All right, so thank you for joining me for this cup of coffee. Let's Coffee is a collaboration between Yardstick Coffee and Daily Drink magazine. And if you'd like to join us at any of our taping days, I guess, where we record this show, please follow us on Instagram, either Yardstick or Daily Drink magazine, or Honeycomb Manila, where we come from, where we tape the show. So yeah, please come join us anytime. Thank you, Tere, for joining us.
Thank you, Kayo.
We'd love to have you back maybe at some point in the future.
Yeah.
And we're very happy to have you as our friend and in this industry together. And thank you all for watching. Let's have coffee.